Dan, what about you? I'm just curious, like what your sort of emotional response has been. Like
Mine?
what? Yeah.
You know, it varies day to day. I think the most difficult days, I just feel completely overwhelmed with how many people are sick and dying, and the unemployment that has happened, the loss of livelihood in addition to lives. And, so I feel incredibly helpless and hopeless and despairing, and it's not a good day. And then on other days, I feel more hopeful and try to be helpful, and which I think makes me feel more hopeful, and really try to look at the deeper meaning that this moment of collective, as Laura, you say, rebooting, this disorganization that may be, a godsend in a way, as terrible as the suffering is and as horrible it is that is affecting marginalized groups, racially marginalized groups, economically marginalized groups more. It's just horrible. That hopefully, if we can do this right as a human family, I don't know, Laura, if you were saying that you're just aware of more birds singing, but I think there are actually more birds. I think the planet has taken a deep breath and says, thank the good Lord, you guys have stopped your shenanigans.
Yes.
And, why don't you learn a lesson from this? This weekly thing we're doing for frontline workers, what I did was I presented this kind of an overview of how being mindful, leads to these 6 physiological changes. The first is your brain becomes more integrated. So that helps with regulation, like regulating stress and stuff. But the other 5 are really fascinating. They include, enhancing the immune system's function, cardiovascular functioning, reducing stress, and reducing inflammation. So there'd be a physiological reason why doing mindfulness practices as a frontline worker, for sure, but even as a patient, well, it couldn't hurt, but I mean, it could really help even reduce, the assault, where it looks like the coronavirus itself as an infectious agent is leading to destruction of tissue. But then there's a secondary phase that's involving what we're just beginning to understand may be more of an autoimmune inflammatory response. Your body is trying to kill the virus, but it gets a little over enthusiastic. So it's a little tricky because you can't give outright inhibitors of the inflammatory response, because that could inhibit your ability to attack the virus, which you need to do. So the mindfulness could be a perfect addition to whatever other medical things you're doing, because it might alter the epigenetic regulatory processes to reduce the inflammatory response, the autoimmune part of it, but let you keep the immune system response to kill the virus. So it could very well be the exact thing. And it's basically what we're trying to teach to the frontline workers for their own well-being. But you could make a conceptual argument anyway that, it's exactly what all citizens should be doing. And in fact, it's probably the reason in some level why you'll see government officials now saying, wear masks and meditate. I know in mindfulness, you're supposed to just kind of be with what is and accept what it is. But I also think that cultural evolution requires intentionality on how we don't feel committed to an outcome. But if you don't set a direction, then you're going to be aimless. Mm-hmm. So this probably goes against what a lot of mindfulness teachers would say. But I do feel like we have to intentionally identify a direction that might be a new direction rather than going back to business as usual. So that gets me up in the morning, and it makes me feel like, okay, a system like humanity on Earth needs some kind of massive disruption, or its inertia just keeps it going in the same direction. And I almost feel a kind of incredible hopefulness. I won't call it elation, but it's almost like an appreciation for the pandemic, actually, that as terrible as the deaths are and how unfair it is who it's affecting, even if this body dies, I hope that in this community that we're creating about the future of humanity, is what the community is all about, that we don't forget those birds, that we don't forget that Earth. I grew up in LA. I've never seen LA look this beautiful.
Yeah.
Every day.
Like the possums are out, the squirrels. Like, I mean, there's more animals in our backyard than I've ever seen ever.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. So, and look, people are learning to live with less. You know, we should do like a hashtag, less is more, or something like it. Seriously. I've started these pep talks. I don't know if you were at them on Fridays at 1 in California. And, you know, I thought there might be like a couple dozen people might want to come, where they talk about the science of the mind and stuff like that, and really see how you could use what Louis Pasteur said, which is chance favors the prepared mind, and prepare everybody's mind with, you know, the science about what you could do to be of service to other people, to be very aware of your subjective experience, and to really try to not only deal with the challenge of the virus, instead of seeing it as a threat, see it as a challenge, but then get ready for what's happening next. You know, what's the next phase of human evolution following this planetary pandemic? So anyway, we've begun this kind of community building conversation about it, and it's been really fascinating to think about grief as requiring not just a sense of loss, but the resolving of the grief, inviting, you know, a finding of meaning. So it's been really profound to start talking to people about this.